Welcome to the Armchair Constituents, the weekly podcast about news topics. While we're not experts or academics, we do like to speak our voice freely. And keep in mind that as the facts change, so can our opinions.
We are now about to present the main attraction of our world-famous show.
Alright, I should have recorded that. Welcome. This is... Yeah, I'm recording now, Kramer. Just calm down.
Crap. I want to tell you about a dream I had about Vladimir Putin last night.
I don't want to hear about your weird Putin dreams. So this is the Armchair Constituents, episode 15. We're what, 3 days late now? 2 days late? We're going to be 3 days late because this is going to be a split podcast, but through podcast magic, you won't even know, other than me just telling you.
So ignore that part.
I'm Jeff. This is Kramer, who's talking in the background.
Hey everyone.
No guests this week, but
Although that was a lot of fun.
yeah, we'll have one again next month. This is being recorded the evening of July 25th. Let's just move into it because we only have a short amount of time to do this first half. We're gonna go into updates first. We have something with President Duterte, right?
Yeah. You and I talked about it a little bit earlier in the week. Duterte has looked to extending martial law, which I would consider not surprising by any stretch of the imagination, based off of past things he's said and done, like instituting martial law. But he mentioned something. You brought it to my attention that he had brought up the idea of letting this ISIS affiliate have the city or the island that they have taken over, which would be, it's interesting. I think it's a very novel idea. I mean, as we talked about in previous episodes, I mean, this is a conflict that isn't new by any stretch. It's 100-year-old conflict between the very Catholic Filipino government and this very Muslim region of the Philippines. And it's only in recent years or recent decades, maybe since the 80s, that it's really taken a hardline religious turn. So I mean that will not be suffered here in the United States. That would be ceding something to terrorists. So we'll totally poo-poo the idea. But it actually is, I guess, interesting, or to say the least, worth a conversation because of the fact that it's controversial alone. So interesting to.
Yeah, I don't think it'll be much of a conversation. If they do it, they're just going to get shit on by most of the world. But
I really don't think Donald Trump would be that petty. There are adults in the room now.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, Scaramucci's gonna. Yeah, he's the voice of reason, isn't he?
I just can't believe no one has made a Bohemian Rhapsody joke about his name yet. I'm just waiting for that. It's also because I don't use social media that much, so it may have already.
It hasn't. Don't worry. Maybe you'll start that. Maybe you could do it.
I'm a little hoarse.
Oh, why did that get moved? Charlie Gard is our next. If you haven't heard, his parents, I'm not sure what the word is. They stopped fighting to try to get him to the United States. Which, I mean, we talked about this before. Essentially, the doctor from Colombia, if I'm remembering correctly, he came over and examined the child Charlie and couldn't. He basically said the treatment wouldn't do anything at this point. The damage was irreversible, so they removed it. But the parents said this, so I'm not sure exactly how the doctor said it, but basically if he had been able to administer the treatment earlier, the therapy earlier, that he might have or would have been able to reverse some of the damage or stop some of the damage. This is one of those really sad things, but it also calls into question if that is true, even remotely true. There's a chance that it could be true. Why was this hospital allowed to basically just deny that ability?
For me, it doesn't even matter if it could have been true. It's the fact that they weren't allowed to. It would have cost the hospital nothing. I mean, every single facet of this, of the trial this family has gone through, has been helped by people's sheer altruism, be it the Catholic Church, be it Columbia University, be it the individual people that donated money to them. Yeah, to me, it doesn't matter whether or not it could have helped. It's the fact that they shouldn't have to fight for what they think is best for their child this way.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. That's that was a way more elegant way of saying it. I agree with what you're saying. I don't see how anybody can be okay with the hospital making a decision for you when you have the money and the means and the support to try to save not just your child, just a person's life, and they're saying, no, you can't do that.
Yeah, and I mean, I know that when we initially talked about this a couple episodes back, we brought up extreme circumstances where it's appropriate for the hospital to step in. You know, if you have religious parents that want to deny their child a particular treatment or want their child to do something or get a treatment that they shouldn't have, I mean, those are so few and far between. Those are so removed as outliers that, I mean, it is the same thing we've said about it before. It's just an incredibly sad set of affairs.
Right. And it's one of those things you have to imagine this is going to come up again. I mean, this is the first time I've heard about something like this, but this isn't something I look into regularly. This is definitely the most publicized, or at least as of, like, in recent memory. But something like this would have to come up again. If the hospital is essentially making life and death decisions against the family's wishes, I mean, I'm assuming they can't just pull the plug on patients without the family's consent. But I mean, how long until that becomes what they can just start deciding when your family members die?
The whole point of their argument was that it won't be in the child's best interest to do it. It will cause undue pain. So I mean, it is not a huge logical leap to say that the living in and of itself causes undue pain. And I'm not making one of those annoyingly moralistic arguments about how suicide is unethical. I think there are circumstances in which suicide is ethical, and I'm a firm believer personally in the frustratingly grandiose name of death with dignity. Yeah, I'm a firm believer that someone should have the right to end their life if they have a dire medical diagnosis that there's no coming back from. But it's also not unreasonable to see that type of thinking with regards to Charlie.
Yeah. Let's move out of this before we get too speculative.
Yeah, let's move into something equally sad. We're both on the same
page. We're sitting here getting a little too conspiracy theory.
Let me tell you what's wrong with socialized medicine, Jeff.
All right, so topic number one. You can rant a little bit on this. I think we both are in agreement. But so was it last week or the week before? They were trying to vote on it was last week, right? They were trying to vote on the healthcare bill. Senator McCain was in the hospital with a blood clot, getting a blood clot removed, so he wasn't there. And of course, how it played out was they lost more Republican votes, and they basically just stopped. And now they're trying to repeal it. But in the wake of that, we got the news that Senator McCain was diagnosed with brain cancer. My understanding is a fairly aggressive form of brain cancer. I believe you said it right. It's
glioblastoma. It's what Ted Kennedy had.
Right. Yeah, I remember hearing that on the Fifth Column. We haven't talked about them in like 5 minutes.
We were going for a personal record. One time we made it like 22 whole minutes without mentioning it.
But yeah, he was diagnosed with that. What did you say the life expectancy was? I mean, to me it sounded almost like it was a death sentence.
I mean, it basically is. Apparently, the way glioblastoma just spreads is it just moves through the brain like a spider web, and you can remove the tumors, but they just grow back immediately. I mean,
he did remove the tumor when he was.
I believe. I know that they took something. I don't know if it was a tissue sample or what, or if they pulled the entirety of a tumor
I was
out
under
of
the impression
Senator McCain's brain.
I believe I read that they removed the tumor, but like you
I
said,
mean,
it
they
would
may
grow
very
back.
well have. I didn't really read that closely into it.
But
Yeah, but
I mean, from what you've told me about this type of cancer, it's going to grow back. I don't want to sit here and talk about how he's going to die because I mean, while it's inevitable, it's morbid, and I don't need to continue to say that.
yeah,
He is going to return to Senate. It said he's going to return to the Senate for the healthcare vote. I'm assuming the healthcare repeal vote.
yeah. I mean, that's. I would assume he's going to vote to repeal as well.
Right. Well, we don't need to get into whether or not that's going to happen. You mainly had a reason for why you wanted to bring this up, correct?
Yeah, I mean, I got really frustrated. You and I talked about this the day that it happened, about all the vitriol and the bile and the anger that was being launched at John McCain. And I mean, you had you talked with people that were like, it's a good thing this man is dying. I didn't meet anyone like that directly. I don't associate with scum, so. But the amount of vitriol being launched, being thrown against this man is so frustrating. There are lots of things to dislike about John McCain's policies. And I mean, Jeff and I had the conversation about, like, how much better are we, that we made fun of the man before, and we've said that he's a bad person. But I think there's a huge distinction between us saying these policies are dumb, and if you believe this, that's a dumb thing to believe, versus what these people are saying, which is, I hope you die. I'm glad you're dying, which is horrible. And the primary thing that's been thrown against him is, you supported bad policies and you did bad things and you hurt people. And it pisses me off so much that these people have this one-dimensional view of death. For me, if there is someone that you don't like in the world, someone that has wronged you or that you feel is bad, you better hope that person lives as long as possible, at the very least, so that they can redeem themselves in your eyes, whatever narcissistic, self-aggrandizing thing that means to you. You better hope they live a really long time to undo bad things that you think they did. There's to redeem themselves. There's no redemption in death. That's the fucking end of it. And I mean, death comes for all people equally. Every not to, because there are different types of graves, but for the sake of turn of phrase, every grave is the same. It's pissed me off so much seeing it come from the left, of people who said, oh, he voted against this type of healthcare thing. He killed people. Now he's going to die. And you want to be like, you dense motherfucker. Everyone dies.
Well, I mean,
and then it's coming
the thing
from,
is, too, most of these comments coming, I won't even say it's from the left or the right, but most of these comments being put out there they're not even claiming his views. It's almost just like, they're like, well, everybody seems to hate this guy. He must have been a bad guy. Let me just say something just outrageous. Yeah. And I hope he has a quick death. And like, I'm trying to say stuff. It's just, to me, it's just disgusting. He's a fairly moderate voice in the Senate. Does he support? I don't agree with a lot of his positions, and a lot of stuff he's supported in his later life is absurd, to say the least. But
yeah,
we could have had a way worse senator, and Arizona very well could in the near future. So I don't know. But regardless of his political positions, sorry about that. I can't fathom, even if you're just doing it online, to go online and just grotesquely talk about how you are happy he's gonna die and I hope it's quick. I mean, I've seen people talk about they hope it's painful, and I'm just like, what is wrong with you? What has he done to you personally? What is, like?
It's that sense of anonymity.
These are the same people that will get behind a murderer because of their race. These are the exact same people. They just have a one-track mind. They just look for categories, and they support and condemn based on those categories.
I mean, it's the thing that you really want to ask these people is, could you name me just 2 to 3 policies that John McCain supported and advocated for that you don't like? Like, and I'm not talking about like, oh, he's opposed to gay marriage. I mean, like something that's like substantive that you know that he voted for or that he proposed that you don't like. I'm going to go on a limb and say most people can't. I mean, I'm sure as hell probably
most
can.
people didn't know he was a senator until they read Senator John McCain has brain cancer. So
Fair point.
But yeah, I mean, this is just one of those things. Like,
It's tacky. That's
week,
all it is.
Yeah,
It's just fucking tacky.
We talk about it. I just found it disgusting, and it never crossed my mind when I read it. Like, it was sad. I wasn't distraught over it, but I also wasn't like I just, to have that first thought in your head is, oh, I have to get on Facebook and I need to say this because everybody needs to know how much I hate this man.
It's that sense of anonymity that we've talked about on here before. You get, so long as you have some degree of psychological distance between you and who you're talking to or what you're talking about, it's really easy to be an asshole. And there's a huge amount of psychological distance between you and a representative for a state that you're not even in, a guy that you've never met, that you've only seen on TV a few times. And there's also a huge amount of psychological distance between you and however many Twitter followers you have, or however many Facebook friends or how many likes your pages has. It's I'll say for the 10,000th time, it's really frustrating.
Yeah, and I'll also say for the 10,000th time, the Fifth Column did a segment on this, which I listened to last night. It was very good. They also did one on LA riots, which is a documentary.
Yeah, that was actually a super interesting segment.
Yeah, I need
like
to,
Welch got passionate.
When he was talking about like growing up during that time in LA or just living in LA during that time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I want to watch that.
I do too. That might be a good idea for our first documentary show.
I don't know. That seemed pretty deep documentary. I feel like it'd be hard to say a lot. I mean, maybe. I have to watch it first. Let's move into topic number 2, which this is a personal thing for Kramer. I think he's talked about this for a couple weeks now, so we finally worked it in. Nuclear energy. You have plenty to talk about here. I'm mostly going to be listening to the lecture and asking questions to try to understand. So go ahead.
So I did all of my research on this like over the course of a few days, a week and a half ago. So I may be a touch rusty, but I'm a big fan of nuclear energy. I like renewable energy sources, and I'm a really big fan of clean energy. And I like the cross section that nuclear offers. It's a hell of a lot safer than people give it credit for. But what the thing that I wanted to talk about with regards to nuclear energy this week was what the American Petroleum Institute is doing. So the American Petroleum Institute is a lobby for natural gas, obviously petroleum. And basically they're going through states that have deregulated energy markets, and they're trying to get nuclear power facilities defunded. So all power stations, nuclear, gas, coal, everything, they all receive subsidies of some variety. And green energy sources receive a bunch of them. And nuclear energy receives, for their size and the amount that they contribute, which for clean energy sources, they contribute, I think, 68% of our clean energy. They get a fairly small amount. And gas, oil, and coal get mostly the gas and oil, I should say, get them in the form of tax breaks. So the American Petroleum Institute, the lobbying arm of natural gas, is trying to get this government funding stopped for nuclear reactors. They're doing a lot of scare tactics with regards to news, making up all types of information about how unsafe nuclear reactors are, which is absolute bullshit. In the past, I think it's 10, 15 years, 2 people have died at nuclear reactors, and one guy fell and another guy had something dropped on him. It had nothing to do with nuclear energy.
Nobody died at Fukushima. That was the one. That was the plant in Japan.
Shit, did someone die? I'm sorry. I was speaking strictly of America. My apologies. No one's died in the United States. And the big one in America that we always think about is 3 Mile Island. But even then, no one died. no environmental damage was caused because of it, and all the radiation stayed on site and it was contained. But it's so right now the nuclear lobby, the Nuclear Energy Institute, has lobbied to save some of their nuclear plants in New York and Illinois, and they're fighting for them in Ohio and Pennsylvania. And over the next 10 years, they're expecting 6 more plants to close. And the operating theory as to why this is happening is because natural gas wants to get a monopoly over the power market. And it's interesting how they plan to do this. A lot of this is based around deregulated energy markets. So the energy market is split in 2 ways in the United States. You have traditional vertically integrated systems where energy is more or less a utility, in a more concrete way, versus deregulated markets where regional transmission organizations, RTOs, and independent system operators, ISOs, operate a grid. And what they do is they hold auctions for energy providers. So you'll have someone auctioning for a natural gas energy power plant. You'll have someone bidding for nuclear energy. You'll have someone bidding for coal, someone bidding for solar, wind, and all this stuff. And the idea is that when you put the energy grid up for bid, that you'll get lower and lower prices. The concern that's coming out of this right now, though, is that because our energy markets are so wonky the way that they are, and natural gas is so abundant and so cheap, that natural gas can get way, way lower than any other form of energy. Lower than nuclear, lower than solar, geothermal, anything like that. It can get incredibly, incredibly cheap. Then part of that is because nuclear energy has a massive startup cost up front, enormous. And we have a ton of natural gas. So they can underbid a lot of people in these regions that are deregulated. And all the plants that have closed or are in danger of closing are all in these deregulated areas because they're being underbid by the natural gas group. And the concern, go ahead.
I looked it up just to cement your point. 34 people died in Fukushima, but 0 were from radiation. They were from the evacuation after the earthquake. They died from just injuries trying to get out of the plant. So yeah, but keep going, Dave. I just wanted to let you know your point was still.
Thank you. When it started, I was like, oh shit, I'm gonna have to argue about this. But so the concern is natural gas getting a monopoly, being able to undercut nuclear energy, which again provides 68% of our clean energy sources, and at the same time pushing to defund or any type of subsidy or federal or state assistance to nuclear energy. And not to sound like a Democracy Now! Or an alternate conspiracy theorist here, one of the concerns is that they're going to jack up prices all at once when they break into the European markets. So right now, Europe is very heavily reliant on Russia and Russia's national gas company, Gazprom, for all of the natural gas. Russia really wants to keep this way. And they just we covered it on an episode of the Armchair Constituents, where the Azerbaijanis were set to begin supplying natural gas to the European Union countries, and Russia stepped in and destabilized that. They want Europe reliant on them for gas. And the United States is trying to break into that. Russia can provide it a little bit cheaper than we can right now, but we are building liquefied natural gas facilities and coastal terminals along the coast of the United States and Europe in an effort to break into the European market, and we can undercut Russians' cost. And this is if the United States natural gas companies are able to break into European markets, it is predicted that under dire circumstances, the price of natural gas can increase between 50 and 100%. I'm sure that's a touch alarmist. The source that I used was from a gentleman who writes for Forbes. He linked it back to an Eli Lake article. But there's concern that basically they'll just undercut the market. They'll bottom everybody out on bids, and then they'll jack their prices up all at once. And we, the United States, in these deregulated markets more specifically, won't have a diversified energy market. And you can listen to any especially if you listen to the advocates for renewable energy, probably because it's in their benefit to have a very, very diverse energy market right now, because they represent the diversity. You need to have a very diverse energy market because things ebb and flow so aggressively. When we went through like the polar vortex, or when you go through extreme weather circumstances, nuclear is the only type of energy not affected. And nuclear represents a great base supply of energy. And they get better and better about it constantly. They're making more efficient fuel. They're understanding how to use nuclear waste better.
Is
So I mean,
is natural gas is natural gas? That's fracking, right? What they do?
Yeah,
to,
yeah, that's
to,
fracking.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, so I mean, I know this is just kind of a deluge of information. It's like drinking from a fire hydrant. I mean, I was kind of really interested in it when I initially read it too. I mean, I'm generally a free marketeer kind of guy, and there were some really interesting articles about how basically a free market in energy is virtually impossible, because through one means or another, all forms of energy get subsidized, either because you need to encourage someone to build some type of facility somewhere, so you got to give them a bunch of tax breaks, which distorts the market, or you start subsidizing renewable energy, which is something that's very, very worthwhile investing in, and that distorts the market. And one of the very interesting things is that the energy market is a little bit like the healthcare market. And remember when we talked before about the first time we talked about healthcare together, we said that insurance companies and hospitals have an interest in spending a lot of money,
Right.
and doctors have an interest in performing a lot of tests. The way that energy companies get paid is very similar to that. To quote an article by a gentleman named Kavala, and I can't remember his first name, but he writes about nuclear energy. The way that it's set up is under the century old model, a regulator reviews a utility's operating expenses and capital investments and enables the company to receive a return through the base rate. Perhaps most importantly, the regulator also allows for a percentage of return on investment. This is usually about 7 to 9% in the current environment, applied to the unpredicted amount of capital the debt's utility and equity investors have contributed. So basically, the more money you spend, the higher they allow your rate of return. So they have a huge interest wasting money, so that they can then in turn either write that off for investment or something like that, but they can raise their prices to get more cost back. And one last point, I think, in my big deluge of information, a study done in April 2015 by the American Public Power Association showed that in 2014, prices in deregulated markets, the cost of energy was up to 35% higher than those in regulated markets. And this study was done by someone who's pushing for public power, so there may be some bias in it, but it's still an interesting study.
We were talking about this before. Did you say Virginia is regulated or deregulated?
I think we're regulated now that I think about it. I have to look.
Yeah, I just couldn't remember what it is that you said. Now, I mean, you talk about this monopoly, but then you hear about like overseas, especially in I want to say it was Asia. I don't know. I can't speak to which Asian nation, but you hear all the time about them building these massive solar fields and stuff. So it seems like Europe is the last market that's gonna try to use natural gas. So this is mainly something that's just gonna affect us in Europe. That's basically this monopoly that they're building. But at the end of the day, like fracking can't be sustainable. It's not safe, and I'm not arguing that this isn't gonna happen at all, because it's happening. It's no way, you can't say it isn't, but I just don't see where I don't know that they moved to nuclear because of the startup cost, though it seems like they should. It would be in the best interest of the people, at least from what you've told me here.
Yeah,
but when they have stuff like solar and wind power, which seems to be getting very popular and profitable, I just don't see where we shift from oil and coal to natural gas.
Yeah.
what is besides the fracking? What is the environmental impact of natural gas? Do you know? Like, is it just as like you have a coal plant, you burn the coal, like that? There's that ash that gets into the
Yeah.
atmosphere. Is there something like that with natural gas, or is it essentially just the actual process of mining it? I'm assuming that's what you call it.
I mean, I know that fracking isn't exactly good for the environment. I've heard some disputes on related to earthquakes and things like that. I mean, it's not something I've looked into. I actually have a family member who is a geologist, and I should ask him.
You should have him on the show and have him talk about this.
Yeah, but so I mean, aside from just, I mean, it's not great for the environment and the emission that it puts out. I did not know that both natural gas and the coal industry emit more radioactivity than every nuclear facility in the United States. In the process of refining natural gas, it apparently, based off what I understand, and this was a few days worth of research, so God forgive me if it isn't true. Is that in the refining and the purification of the natural gas, it emits a ton of radiation, and coal ash or coal dust is apparently incredibly radioactive. So this kind of feeds into the disinformation campaign that's been launched against nuclear energy, which is that it's dangerous because it's radioactive, when in reality it's less radioactive than what we've currently used and have used in the past.
Yeah.
But I mean, with regards
just to be a dick for a second, it makes sense that those industries will release more radiation, because if a nuclear plant is just pumping radiation out, it's not a very effective power nuclear energy plant.
Yeah,
People
and then we would all have superpowers too, and we probably wouldn't need,
life would be
anything.
a comic book.
You just get a few guys with super speed on some mouse wheels, and we can go for years.
So I gotta tell you, this seems very like doom and gloom. You paint this world where natural gas has this is basically winning this bidding war to build this global monopoly, and then at some point they're gonna jack up the rates. Now, natural gas, I know you told me nuclear requires no special, like you don't have to have your house retrofitted. It would just attach to the current power lines. I'm assuming that's what you were trying.
Yeah.
Does natural gas work the same way, or would it be like having gas power? Because I know people have like gas tanks at their house, have to come get refilled.
I mean, it would just be. I mean, they hook up into the grid the exact same way. It's just that you have a natural gas powered power plant as opposed to a coal powered power plant or a nuclear powered power plant.
To me, just the negatives you hear about fracking, and maybe I don't know. Maybe we should speak to your geologist. At least speak to him. I don't know if it's a male or female, but
it's a dude. But thank you for not assuming his gender.
I'm just a person. I don't need you to thank me for that. But yeah, I would be interested to know, just especially from that point of view, like what fracking does to the environment.
Yeah,
But,
I mean, I know that there's been some controversy because they've done documentaries where pipes are lighting on fire, but then I've seen
Isn't it?
But I've seen
argument
other
about the stuff going on in Flint and most of like a lot of places.
Yeah, just sewer gas can cause a pipe to light on fire.
Right.
Too. Dang, I should have been a geologist, then I could talk on this one topic that we've talked about.
Just a rotate.
No, but so I mean, it's. I don't think it's necessarily all doom and gloom. I mean, I am generally not a very optimistic person. Some people would call me pessimistic. I just call myself realistic. I mean, I don't think it's all entirely doom and gloom. I think there are enough states fighting for to keep their nuclear reactors, and at the same time, people are trying to find ways. And again, this is the market creating circumstances where people respond to it, even if it is a distorted market. Smaller nuclear reactors are being invented that can still power vast amounts of houses or vast areas for much less startup cost, because they are so much smaller. They don't have the same output, but they're smaller and they can get the ball rolling. I mean, additionally, scientists are getting better about, and I may have mentioned this before, I got kind of on a roll earlier and blacked out, but there was interesting, a little segment on Vox that I watched where they interviewed a nuclear engineer, and she's the CEO of this company that is inventing better fuel, because the rods that reactors currently use are very, very inefficient. They get a small fraction of the energy that you can out of it, and you get less energy and have more waste to deal with. She is apparently, with her team, invented this type of nuclear fuel that looked like little paintballs, but you have a substantially less amount of waste, which is one of the big things. It is a valid criticism to launch at nuclear energy, that what do you do with the waste? And apparently, Yucca Mountain has been closed down, so we can't do anything with our nuclear waste there anymore. But they've invented a fuel that has less waste and is much more efficient. So, I mean, I'm optimistic. I mean, I also think as green and renewable energy sources begin to rise, that nuclear will get a better share. And I think that's just simply because even though we're losing power facilities still, and we have more set to close, nuclear is still providing a vast majority of the clean energy. And I think as our markets naturally begin to shift away from fossil fuels and non-renewable sources, which I think is just an inevitability, and we start looking at these, we will give nuclear a better eye.
Yeah, well, and I said this when you were pre-show, just explain this, and it sounds almost like, whereas like solar seems like the low scale, almost like off the grid renewable energy source, nuclear sounds like the large scale utility way to power cities and states.
The way that
renewable energy climate. I mean, you're right in that. Like, we're shifting towards green energy. We have large corporations and counties and cities and states that are pushing for reform in renewable energies. I mean, you have people like Elon Musk that's literally just trying to develop things. And I'm not sitting here like gonna praise him, but I mean, he's trying to create ways to better society for the lowest cost. It just, I find him very interesting, just the stuff that's being developed there. Like I told you, like the shingles for the roof that are solar panels. He's made those. He's just trying to make them cheap enough where an everyday person could buy them to put them on the roof of their house. Stuff like that would be interesting. And then you could have these smaller power plants to basically make up the deficit.
Yeah, and you could have your own supplemental. I mean, based off of, because I live so close to and work in Maryland, even though I still live in Virginia, Maryland has a lot of subsidies for solar panels being put on houses.
Wait a minute, I know you worked in Maryland. Ugh.
Yeah, I work in North Bethesda. Oh my God. I used to think it was a joke that people were like, "Oh, people in Bethesda can't drive. People in Maryland can't drive." Let me just tell you, this is going to be angrier than my John McCain thing. Jesus God, oh my God. So, drivers in Maryland, one, have no concept of depth perception. They'll just leave 50 fucking feet in between you and the next car, and you're like, "We're at a light. You can pull up." But what they lack in depth perception, they also lack in lateral perception. You know how sometimes if you've got like a 3-lane road that's going around a corner, sometimes a few people will shift over. You can just be driving straight and someone will just be like, "Whoa, sorry, didn't mean to get into your lane there, bud." And they like, okay, there are 2 lanes turning right. I'm in the outermost lane turning right, and I go to the outermost lane like you're supposed to do. If you're turning from the outermost lane, you go to the outermost lane. The person in the inner lane stays in the inner lane. I go to the outermost lane. A guy that was in the inner lane also tries to go into the outermost lane, almost T-bones me, honks at me, flips me off like I did something wrong. I hate driving in Maryland so much.
Well, I think we can both agree that Maryland's the worst. And I'm not going to apologize for that.
At first it was North Carolina we hated, but now we're digging into Maryland.
I hate them too, but I hate them both for different reasons.
Yeah. But anyway, like we'd said, you can have really good supplemental energy from sources like solar. And actually, my buddy Mike, who we've talked about having on here before, and who's interested in it, he's an electrician. He understands energy pretty decently, and he and I have had many conversations about solar panels. He's not a huge fan of solar panels as a primary source of energy, just because at the time it's inefficient. It will get better, obviously, as time goes on.
Don't solar panels connect to some kind of battery source? They essentially charge a battery that your house or whatever it is hooked up to will use. At least that's how I understand it. I could be wrong.
I think
it's not like direct current. You're not like it's not absorbing the sunlight and then going directly into power.
Then your house would get cold at night.
To me, it would seem like, well, I mean, it's also possible that solar panels just aren't incredibly efficient, which would explain why they need such large fields.
That's what he's getting at, is that the efficiency that you're getting for one solar panel right now, his argument is the cost just isn't worth what you get. It's so inefficient at the time, and the cost of solar panels is so expensive unless they're heavily subsidized like they are in parts of Maryland, which can also distort, where people are getting their energy, and can distort the energy markets pretty aggressively, which I don't know what that means, but I read it in an article and I like the sound of it. It just distorts the market.
To me, if it distorts, like you were saying, like energy providers make money based on how much money they spend. So if they're losing money from customers who are getting their power from their own solar panels, wouldn't it raise the cost for everybody else?
I think the other thing that it would do, it would also potentially overload facilities. I mean, not just things like solar panels. Like we have where I live, we have the house I'm in has geothermal heat, so we get our heat from the earth. So that's pretty cool. But I guess it could also just overload some power suppliers. If you have a power plant or a facility supplying power that is meant to be able to provide power to just pull an arbitrary number and say 100,000 people, but your state or local government starts heavily subsidizing the use of your facility, and now you suddenly have to power 200,000 people, that could, distort the market and potentially bad service, or just blow out whatever facility you have. And then people are without power. So as opposed to existing at a smaller scale in proportion to what people need, you could potentially just not exist at all or alienate people to what you're doing. And then they just run back to a non-renewable source of energy. That's my thought. I don't know.
Well, let's go ahead and stop it here. We'll be back. Well, we'll be back tomorrow, but it'll be like 2 seconds for the rest.
Ooh, can we do like one of those when you hear the ding, turn the page. Okay.
No, we're not doing that. God damn. No.
Well, bye everybody until about 10 seconds from now.
It won't even be that long. And we're back. Just jumped through time, and now we have to try to get back into this.
I know we were in a really solid groove, and then we broke it. For those of you that don't know, it's 24 hours later now.
Yeah, and
still wearing the same clothes.
Yeah. Shh. Jesus. Like, we're not gonna talk about anything that happened today, which is.
Yeah, we need material for Sunday. Otherwise, we're just gonna sit around and be like, "So,
we do
watch Ozark yet?"
Yeah, we touched. We talked about McCain returning to Senate to vote for the healthcare repeal, which he may or may not have already done yesterday. I don't know. I work nights. I woke up in time to do this podcast, but he did. He had a speech, which I felt was decent, though the masses just seemed to find something else to shit on the senator for. But yeah, and then he voted to repeal Obamacare, which failed. I don't think we need. We're
very unsurprising.
Yeah, we're not going to talk about that in depth next week. There's going to be a lot of twit next week. There's already a lot this week, but Jesus Christ. Let's move into the next topic though, which is the CIA. Oh yeah, Trump stops the CIA funding of Syrian rebels. The program Timber Sycamore. You wanna go into this?
Yeah, so in 2013, Obama put funding in place for Syrian rebels. It was under the name Timber Sycamore. At the same time, the Pentagon was also doing some funding of Syrian rebels, but we'll get into that in a second. So, I mean, the funding has been pretty controversial. Funds came not just from the U.S., but also from Qatar or Qatar, if you're one of those people, Jordan, and Turkey. And
Wait a minute, if you're one of those people?
some people pronounce it Qatar, which I don't get, but you know,
Oh, I mean,
teach their own.
I just wasn't sure what you were trying to say with that. Like, you're one of those dumbasses. What's wrong with you?
Wait, did you just get racist on the podcast?
Talk about this
So the controversy surrounding it was sometimes guns would end up in the hands of people that they weren't supposed to be in the hands of. This. Yeah, seriously, I don't know if anyone's familiar with the Mujahideen back in the invasion of Afghanistan.
Oh.
This rose into prominence with a second program that was overseen by the Pentagon that was training rebels to fight ISIS, when $500 million of weapons were used to end up training like 5,000 rebels that resulted in just 5 trained fighters. And this same program would have guns going to different rebel groups, because for those of you that don't know, with the exception of like the coalition forces, there really isn't much of a unified force in Syria. There was the Free Syrian Army, there was al-Nusra, there were a bunch of different ones I just can't remember off the top of my head, and we basically worked with all of them, I think, except al-Nusra at one point or another. And we'd give them guns, and then they'd start fighting each other a whole bunch. So anyway, Trump decided to cancel this policy after speaking with CIA Director Mike Pompeo and H.R. McMaster. And it's brought up a lot of interesting questions. I mean, if anyone's listened to the podcast before, I trace a lot of our problems back now to our arming, training, and funding of a lot of rebels through the Mujahideen. And there were some people that were totally cool. Ahmed Shah Massoud was really good, for instance, but he got blown up in Afghanistan. But there's been a bit of a backlash. And I think part of it may just be because Trump did it. To be perfectly honest, I think there are some people that are just like, oh, Donald Trump did that. We should not like it. But it does bring up a lot of interesting questions. We're spending a ton of money and not getting a lot of results. And there are a lot of people that are saying, look, the rebels alone can't topple Assad. There's nothing that the rebels, the ragtag groups, can do to stop Assad, but they're a good secondary force to the coalition and whatever the United States is going to do. So it's one of those, I don't like the idea of it because it's a huge waste of money, and I think it will cause more problems than it solves, but at the same time, it looks like a massive capitulation to Russia.
Yeah, oh yeah, I mean that was the story. Immediately, it wasn't that this program was stopped. It was that it was stopped, and this is something that Russia's wanted for a long time. Not that that's false. It was just they had to find a narrative, so that's what they went with.
Yeah, I mean,
we have no problem here jumping on the administration when they do something. I get why this is going to have negative effects, but there's a positive outcome here, because like you said, we were just wasting funds and it wasn't really getting anywhere. Though it begs the question why we're willing to waste funds so many other places in the world, but this is where he drew the line. And also the timing, because he had all these stories about him having, I'm using air quotes, but like a secret meeting with Putin at the G20 summit. It's I don't know.
Yeah, it's my initial thought, just because of my interest in history and the fear of unintended consequences and creating our own enemy, is that this isn't a bad thing. Also because it's just you're getting such low returns. You get such diminished returns by funding these people, but at the same time, there's that part of you that has a heart and not a brain that's more like, but they need something, but it's just so ineffective, and they end up fighting each other, and that those funds can be used in other places to better help solve the conflict. But some of the what happens next? So they're not funding the rebels anymore. We're not just leaving Syria. God, no.
Yeah. So it's not like we're just we're just packing up and moving out because we're not giving funds to these.
Yeah, I mean,
groups
we're
and-
still involved. Yeah, we're definitely still involved, especially in the coalition forces. I mean, it's not a. I mean, there are some boots on the ground, but they're all supposed to be special forces and advisors and stuff like that. And a bulk of it's coming from, the coalition forces that are made up, like we talked about, of Kurds, Shia and Sunni militias, Iraqi Hezbollah, which is still a weird thing to say. But apparently, some anonymous official within the administration said that Putin won in Syria, which, I mean, I think obviously this is something Putin wanted because it's one less group of people throwing rocks at Assad and saying, "Hey, get out, please. We really can't do anything." But it brought up a lot of interesting questions of, is this an effort to create goodwill? Because we had the ceasefire in the southwest, and that's near Lebanon and Israel and Jordan. And is this an effort to create goodwill between the United States and Russia through their proxy in Syria? People are asking, did we trade anything for this? What's our long-term strategy? And moreover, what the hell is Trump's foreign policy? I mean, this seems so counter to the man that we saw launch a bunch of Tomahawk missiles to show Assad what's what and say we're not going to stand for it. And I mean, I get that, again, it's a huge waste of money, but Donald Trump also doesn't seem like a person that cares about wasting money. He has filed for bankruptcy before, so clearly he's not very good with it.
Well, we don't have to go back that far. Let's just talk about his first 6 months as he spends millions just going to play golf weekly.
That's a fair point. Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, you just brought up a good point that a few months ago at this point, 2 months ago, he was shooting Tomahawk missiles at an airfield in Syria, and now he's pulling back. It just goes back to what we talked about before. It's his foreign policy is largely, I'd say almost completely based off of the last person he spoke with.
Mm.
Which I find to be interesting. This very, using air quotes again, powerful businessman can be influenced just simply by whoever speaks to him last.
Yeah, I mean, it's
A
narrative,
which also fights that theory that people try to throw out that he's very intelligent. I don't see that as intelligence. If you are being swayed that easily, then you really don't have any kind of makeup of any sort.
One of the narratives that we haven't heard about a lot recently, but that I think may lend a touch of credence to that's the last guy that talked to him, is the struggle between the Bannon wing and the Kushner wing of the White House. I mean, I heard about it brought up again today with Scaramucci having his first foray into the White House, and how Steve Bannon hates Scaramucci. And there's still such tumult in the White House that part of this schizophrenic or this seemingly bipolar foreign policy might just simply be because he's talking with different people and they're telling him to do different things. But I mean, I can see the White House explaining this away, though, and going, look, there's a huge difference between launching Tomahawk missiles in a very strategic, precise way for a fixed dollar cost from a huge distance, being able to keep safe, versus funding rebels where we don't know exactly what's going on. And part of me can concede that argument of we're still pushing for the same things, but we're trying to be smarter about how we spend our doll hairs.
Oh, yeah, it's... okay, I'm glad you had to spruce that up at the end. Of all the things that the man has done thus far, this makes... I won't say the most sense, but this isn't bad. This is at least structurally sound. I don't know if he's doing it for the right reasons or if he even knows what the reasons are, but yeah, I can't bash the actual move.
Yeah, I don't disagree with it. I think it's weird, and I wonder how it plays into the larger scale of what he's doing. And to play political realist for a moment, I wonder how it makes us look in the international sphere. Does it make us look powerful? Does it make us look like we're capitulating? How does it make us look? But at the same time, I'm not going to be upset about it because it wasn't a good program to begin with, and it was really untenable.
Right. I mean, anything it saves us money. Yeah, I mean, I guess our image. The thing is, our image and what the actual military isn't that big. What do you mean? how it makes us look like on a.
I mean, how does in the international sphere does this project strength or weakness? I mean, is this part of a larger plan? What is the geopolitical chessboard
I
look
don't
like?
think-
Are we
I don't think the. Well, I mean, yeah, you always hear about that. The United States needs to portray strength. When it comes to military, we don't need to portray strength. I mean, it's already
because
there.
we are strength?
I mean, the American military is ridiculous. I mean, the size and power of it is insane. Like that's why he doesn't have to worry necessarily about how the strength is betrayed. I don't think us doing this is suddenly gonna be like, well, it's time to move in. Nobody's got that impression. Yeah, but that was just a tangent. Yeah, I think we both kind of agree on this. I don't really have anything more intelligent to add. That was mainly just rambling.
Yeah.
Still trying to wake up here. So
in
it's
relation
hard.
to Qatar and to the Kurds, I mean, I just got a news update from Kurdistan 24 that apparently the Qatar is going to start using the Kurds to get stuff into Qatar itself because they're being hit really hard by the embargo. So just a small update there.
So they
An
hired
otherwise
the Kurds
rambling conversation.
They hired the Kurds as smugglers.
The
Is that
Kurds are
what you're
Han Solo, yes.
Yeah. God damn it! You ruined it. I was gonna say that. All right. You fuck. Let's move into Jake Tapper and Linda Sarzar. Which we have it. In the
Sarsor,
notes.
sour.
We have it in the notes as I say me. Like I changed it. Her name's Linda Sarzar, and I have it changing from Linda to Lisa quite a few times. No one needed to know that. I just felt like I needed to say it.
Yeah, you're in that half sleep honesty. Like being half asleep's a little bit like being drunk. You talk about weird things and you share too much.
I got about 4 hours of sleep. I'm just trying to buckle down and get through this.
Me
Which
too.
is why I'm getting this off to you again.
Yeah, I was about to say, look at these reins. They fit so comfortably in my hand. So, with regards to Jake Tapper and Linda Sarsour, which is really hard to say fast. So, apparently
is
Monday...
it Sarsour, or I thought it was
I've
Sarzar.
heard Sarsour, Sarzor, and Sarsour. We'll just call her Linda.
Sarsour.
Um,
Okay. All right. Well,
Just say it really
Probably
quick. Salazar.
just waiting for my tweet.
So Monday, Linda tweeted about a women's march that she was at. I believe it was actually at the Dykes March. Because they had the women's march the day after inauguration, and I believe this was the Dykes March. And she tweeted, "Happy birthday to the revolutionary, hashtag Asada Shakur. Today's hashtag sign of resistance in Asada's honor is by @Melonious which I think is a clever Twitter handle. I like Spooner." So Jake Tapper, being the decently level-headed human being that he is, responded by questioning whether or not it's appropriate to, honor a woman who is a convicted murderer who killed a state trooper, escaped from prison, and is technically still a fugitive living in Cuba at this time. Linda had the very appropriate response of asking Jake Tapper to please share her ugly sentiments. Apparently, he referred to her sentiments as ugly. He then found a tweet where she had. This is one of my favorite things about Linda, where she had shamed two. She had shamed two female genital mutilation advocates who were victims of it, and said that because they spoke out against Islam and the practice of female genital mutilation, that they should, quote, have their vaginas taken away. She didn't respond to this. And then she did some great undercover reporting and actually outed Jake Tapper as a member of the alt-right, which my mind was blown.
It's worth noting that whatever dinosaur is an advocate for Sharia law. So, yeah.
Yeah, the ACLU, I'm a little miffed because they're fine with Linda, and like I'm not saying that her political speech should be banned. I mean, it's perfectly fine for her to do it, but I think for them to back her up and be like, yeah, we're standing with you, is incredibly
also
stupid.
Why? Nobody was trying to silence her. He was just having a discussion. This is not what you're for. Like, every time you do stuff like this, you make us remember why we hate you. You do something good, and then you're like, oh wait, are you trying to silence this woman? Let's overreact. We back
So,
her.
I mean, I deserve a slap on the wrist because I initially really wrote off Linda Sarsour. I guess it's because I'm a cisgender, heteronormative, white male who is busy just absorbing all the culture that I could. When I first heard about her, I was like, oh, people are freaking out about her. And she just kind of flew off my radar. And that's my fault. I shouldn't have been so disrespectful. You know, a lot of people came out and said that, you know, maybe the use of the hijab is a bad symbol for female empowerment. I disagree with that, but whatever. That's really neither here nor there. But then she came out and she attacked these two women for standing up and helping promote the understanding of female genital mutilation, which is fucking horrible. And she attacked them. And then she, at the Dykes March, apparently banned or had Star of David flags removed from it, which really doesn't help your cause. I don't know. It's baffling the weird bedfellows that the hard left is finding themselves with.
She's not even the hard left. She's in her own little category. They get labeled the left, but you have the same thing going on with I don't even know the word, like hardcore feminists, that really their message isn't about feminism, it's about hate. And they put that guise on it. I suggest you look up Anita Sarkeesian.
I'm vaguely familiar with some of her work.
You'll find her the internet's first
is
professional
equally infuriating.
Victim. Yeah. It's one of those things. She's the one that I believe she runs Feminist Frequency on Twitter. I could be wrong, but I believe it's her. She was grouped with that, so that's why I assume that she has some say in it. But when recently Doctor Who, which is a British program for anybody that doesn't know, the Doctor regenerates. They pick a new actor every couple years. I don't need to explain the specifics, but they picked a female, first female in history. This show's been on for decades. And Feminist Frequency tweeted out, you can't fix the issues just by getting a female doctor. It doesn't fix the transgender, homosexual, anti racism. I think they said anti-black. I don't really know. It was just nonsense, considering the last year's companion was a black female who was a lesbian. But yeah, their general sentiment was, if you don't address every problem, you are the problem. You can't just do something good. You have to. So basically, they needed to pick a black female transgender midget with Down syndrome in order to hit all the marks and be truly progressive. The thing is, then they would have found something else, because these people are professional victims. They find their platform by like making themselves the victim and trying to get sympathy and then outrage.
Yeah,
it's disgusting.
It's very interesting when you look at more fringe or extreme or hardline viewpoints that, if you do not give in to any of their demands or any of the things that they want or think that they have credence, then you're ignoring the problem and you're withholding and you're continuing to stabilize and by default support a system that they dislike. If you capitulate on some, then you're pandering. Oh, you gave us a woman doctor. Oh, so you think you're enlightened and progressive now? Well, no, we're just adhering to the things that people want. People want a female doctor. This is something that's prevalent right now. We feel a need to respond to this. If you do that, you're pandering. It goes beyond the desire for the rectification of wrongs perceived or real, and it goes into almost a self-flogging of admitting that you're wrongdoing, and no one can see, but I'm imaginarily flogging my back, a la Paul Bettany in the Da Vinci Code. That's what they want. And you're right. It's because these people are professional victims. The part of me just wonders how it got to this point. It seems like it got here super quick. I mean, just over the past couple of years.
Well, yeah, the you got to remember stuff like, I mean, Facebook really came along 2008. It's been almost a decade since Facebook started. When Facebook started, the first couple years, you had to have a college email to even get on to even be able to make an account. So those first couple years almost don't even count. Then you have stuff like Twitter coming along, YouTube. YouTube really kind of started in 2005, I believe, but you couldn't post more than 5-minute videos. It was mostly just jokes and shit like that. But as all these things grow, people have found markets, and you have people out there, their whole shtick is just outrage about something. That's all they do, but it's blowing up because it's the new medium. It's just people blogging.
It's the easiest way to create a thought bubble too, or an echo
that's
chamber.
what we're doing here. We record this from our homes and then release it online. I mean, it's simple. I mean, we're not doing what a lot of these people are doing, but regardless.
I think mostly because we're not saying crazy inflammatory things that are unfalsifiable.
Well, I try, but you shut me down every week.
All right, this week I'm gonna say it. I'm gonna say something racist, Jeff. God damn it, we can't do that.
Great, now everybody thinks I'm racist. I appreciate that. You could have just been saying something else. You didn't have to go there.
So anti-Semitic, whatever. You just pick your poison. Yeah. So my natural instinct is always to try to understand, rationalize why a person is thinking, and I guess draw from historical parallels. I guess to go off on a small tangent, but still relevant to it. The only thing that I could think of for a historical parallel to this, and to understand maybe why she thinks the way that she does, is France post World War II. So I just finished this phenomenal book called I say just finished 2 months ago. I finished At the Existentialist Cafe by Sarah Bakewell. I'm a huge fan of existentialist writers, Jean-Paul Sartre, Simone de Beauvoir, Heidegger for all his Nazi controversy.
We get it, you read.
Yeah. But no, sorry, I was trying to rattle off not just your top billing. I wanted to get some of the lesser known ones in too. Maurice Merleau-Ponty. Now I'm done. All right. So a lot of these people fought in the resistance against Vichy France. I was bringing up Vichy France for being like, don't say you're part of the resistance, because it's a period that's interesting and apropos to my interests. And after World War II ended, a lot of these people started to support this. Basically all of the existentialists started to support the Soviet Union. And the big question that they were asking themselves, whether implicitly or explicitly, is how many bad things does the Soviet Union have to do before we'll disown it? And Albert Camus was one of the first to go, nope, fuck that. They're killing people. I don't like it. And he was labeled as a conservative. He was labeled a reactionary. He was an avowed socialist. He wanted to lead revolutions in Algeria. He fought in Algeria, but he was labeled as a reactionary and a fascist and a socialist. And then, Maurice Merleau-Ponty said, I can't support the Soviet Union anymore. They're killing too many innocent people. He was called bourgeois scum. You're a reactionary, you're a conservative. And that's the only type of parallel that I could see here. And part of the justification for what the people like Sartre, Beauvoir believe was that we had seen what conservatism had wrought. Conservatism and hard right ideology had brought about fascism and result Nazism, the extermination of 6 million Jews. And the exact antithesis of that, the hard left, had to be tried at any cost because we had seen what the right had wrought. And that's the only type of parallel that I can see for what people like Sarsour are thinking. That, okay, well, the United States projecting global power, to use an argument that I have created a circumstance in the Middle East. Well, they've created a circumstance in the Middle East. They've had patriarchal societies. White men did slavery and kept women from voting. So we have to go with the exact antithesis of that. If you support any of those things, your name is mud and you are poison. But even with that type of rationalization, even if I tried to compare her to people that were super smart that I like reading, she still sounds like a fucking moron.
That was a roundabout way of getting to my point in general. She's a fucking
moron.
Yeah, I mean, you can look into both these people. They're very much they are morons, because when pressed by anyone with the slightest bit of intelligence that can formulate an argument, they fold because they have no ground to stand on. There is no basis for this kind of thought. Like, it's especially in the United States, these people that are screaming victim because of their sex. It's just, there are disadvantages, but there are way worse places in the world. And to try to go about getting equality by shaming and basically picking out a segment of the population to make the bad guy, and then if you have any semblance of allegiance to that part of the population, you are essentially the devil. Nothing you say is right. Nothing you do will be right, even if it's something that I want.
Yeah, when you talked about her support of Sharia,
it's essentially like a toddler, like just having a temper tantrum, and you're just throwing stuff, just trying to give the kids something, but nothing's gonna work because it's just too far gone. Now they're just having a tantrum to have a tantrum.
Yeah. When you said that, I'd forgotten about the Sharia angle of it, but I read something the other day that was very interesting, where they were talking about people that are first-generation immigrants, so people whose parents immigrate from a country, and then those people are born in the country, or people that hugely identify with a culture that they are ethnically or whatever state they're from, tend to be way more hardliners than people that live there. They use the example of, people that are ethnically Turkish living in the United States tend to be way more supportive of Erdogan than people living in Turkey are. People that people who are ethnically from Cyprus tend to hate, then live in the United States, tend to hate Turkey way more than people in Cyprus do. And part of me wonders, obviously she is of Middle Eastern descent. I do not know from what country or region, but
Palestine.
Okay, Palestine. Okay,
yeah,
so
unapologetically Palestinian.
Okay, yeah. It seems so interesting, and part of me wonders if the same thing doesn't apply, that you have a person who's feeling, and I've had this argument with folks before that were saying, my family was brought to the United States either as slaves, my ancestors, so I was robbed of my culture, or there are people that just have a genuine fascination with their culture, that they're supporting things that almost seem, in this Edward Said Orientalist stereotyping way, things that seem like what they're supposed to support based off of where their cultural and ethnic identity is from originally.
It's easier.
It's easy to paint a caricature of the thing that you're supposed to believe and just do it.
Literally just look at anything that's good about it and just take that, but you don't have to deal with any of the bad because you don't have to live in it. And you see a more realistic, people that live in those countries get a realistic picture of what it is, how daily life is under Sharia law, versus just I don't know what you support in Sharia law, to be honest with you, but that's
I did that. Pew did this really big, like 300-page dossier on Sharia, and there's a lot of people that want it, but it's really interesting the way that they define it. It's something like slightly under 50% of Muslims internationally want Sharia law, but a vast majority of them only want Sharia law for Muslims, and Sharia law should only be applied to divorces and property disputes, which of all things seem very strange, property disputes, but whatever. So while a lot of people who actually live in predominantly Muslim countries do want Sharia law, they're saying it should not apply to Christians, it should not apply to Jews, but she is a person, it kind of gets at my point, she is a person who does not live in these places, who doesn't understand what these people who want Sharia, who have grown up in these places, mean when they say Sharia. They're saying, it's like going to the church for a divorce settlement or something for some people. And then there's crazy people, like ISIS, that are like, Sharia means if you see a woman's hair, she gets stoned to death because she's a...
She also claims she's pro-justice, which I find just hilarious, but okay.
It's very odd. For me, the thing that sticks in my craw the most about this is just the fact that one of the things that bothers me about the modern wave of feminism, and I don't want to sound like one of these anti-feminists, because I'm not, but one of the on-running jokes between myself and my wife is that I'm a bigger feminist than she is. I think on the internet I'm called a cuck, but
can you stop saying you've already called yourself a cisgender, and now you're listen.
I'm attacking myself from the left and the right.
It's fine. I'm not a feminist. I am for the advancement of people in general. If you are worthy
Oh yeah,
of it, then that's what you get. But I'm not gonna sit here and go, I'm a men's right activist, because I'm not. A lot of their shit is fucking bonkers. And then you have feminists. There are a lot of feminist messages that are great.
oh
And
yeah,
they can
yeah.
be applied to all people. But
Mhm.
when you get to the point where there's like, no, it can only apply to women, and then they start segregating women by race, and then they start applying
Yeah.
values to that. Then you're just like, you people have lost your minds, and you have no idea what you're talking about, and you're just racist or sexist, and this is your way of doing that. Whether you're just
Oh,
actually sexist, or you think this is a way to get back at men for some wrong
yeah.
that they've done to you.
Yeah,
So
I agree with you.
I don't think
I,
that's
I, I
anti-feminist to. It should never be. You should never be anti. You should never be considered racist for speaking out against something that you disagree with. It's
Yeah.
But that's professional victimism when they come at you and go, well, you said this negative thing, you must be sexist, and you're just like, that is
Yeah,
ridiculous.
no, but what I was predominantly getting at was, I mean, it's because of the narrative that people on the social justice angle of it like to weave. If you say my problem with feminism is, you get labeled as anti-feminist immediately. But one of my many problems with the newest wave, with the most recent third wave of feminism, is that it assigns all these essentialist qualities to what it means to be a woman. And the second wave feminism you had in the 70s, it was very much like, look, I just want to stop having my ass grabbed at the job. I want to have access to birth control, things like that. And the third
Yeah.
wave feminism is very much like, oh, if you support this as a woman, then you're like an Uncle Tom. You're not a real woman. And you're like, who the fuck are you to say what it is to be a woman or what it is to be a man? That is sexist. Telling me I can't do something because of my sex is sexism.
Right.
And
And we've
it's
had,
one of the things.
and this is that thing, we've talked about it before when we talk about populism. It's that this weird movement on the right and the left to conform into this amalgamation of thoughts and ideas, and don't have anything different than this pack mind. We need a hive mind, everybody working together to get whatever nonsense we want to get through. And if you deviate, you're a pariah, and that's it. You get out.
You're right.
Well, I don't know if we should beat up this person. How dare you? You're done.
You're part of the problem.
It's
It's
ridiculous.
like-
I find this
it's
stuff
like
really
the-
interesting, but it's also, when you try to rationalize it, you just give yourself a headache, because there just is no
Yeah.
rationale to act like this.
Well, it's like it's like the article that you sent me earlier today that cat wrote on John McCain, and he was just ripping him a new asshole and stuff like that. It's the exact same. He was throwing up the exact same argument, basically. If you say anything nice about John McCain, if you even have pity for him, then you're part of the problem, because you forget that he voted for bad things and did bad things. And like, that's fucking ridiculous. This is part of the reason that we have such a bad political culture right now, is because no one can see complexity or can see shades of gray. It's just, I want to know if he's a good guy or is he a bad guy? Do I get to yell at him or not?
Right. Well, and the thing too, and this doesn't necessarily pertain to that, but even though we did talk about that author really just trying to be controversial to get some clicks, which is not unheard of.
Yeah.
But going with that, when we have these professional victims, a lot of them, and I can't say that this is 100% true, but you have a lot of them, I believe, that don't even truly believe the nonsense they're spewing, but they have an audience and they can make money off of this. So they keep doing it. That's a whole different thing that's come along with this internet media culture, where they can make money just off of their ideas through Instagram or Twitter or YouTube. I believe even Twitch. Twitch has kind of moved from just having streaming video games where you can stream podcasts and stuff there. So
yeah, that's one of the biggest criticisms launched against Milo, is that Milo does not actually give a good goddamn about politics. He doesn't care. Milo's in it for Milo, and he wants money, and he found an easy way to make money, and goddamn it, that guy made a ton of money.
Right.
By
And
being just
to me, I find that
disingenuous.
to be dangerous, because it's not like these people are just out there and they're making money off guest spots on TV. They're making money because people truly believe some of the nonsense that they're saying, and I'm sure there's already plenty of cases of where it has become dangerous. Actually, I know there is. There's instances where they speak out against somebody and it gets violent. But I mean, it's a dangerous scenario when you have these people that are, their entire shtick is outrage and causing outrage and getting paid for it. But well, we beat the shit out of this story.
Yeah.
So
you take that topic.
God, we've almost talked for 40 minutes.
We've only got one more topic and then some quick twits. So
I don't even know if twit's that quick, to be honest with you. We have the last one is Trump looking into his ability to pardon himself and his family from the Russia probe. This is one of those things I find interesting, not because he looked it up. I think we could all agree that we were pretty certain that he was going to look into this at some point. But it's more along the lines.
Okay, Google, how do I pardon myself?
He tweeted out basically like the president has complete power to pardon, and then he said, "Why think of that when only crime so far is leaks against us?" I don't. Okay, so my main question is, can the president pardon himself, and why even have rule of law if the president could just break the law and then pardon himself and get away with it?
Yeah, so there's no record of a president pardoning himself at all. It's not into the Constitution. It's not in the Constitution. It's not addressed at all because it seems like a pretty far out there thing. So, I mean, if the president does try to pardon himself, it just reeks of like the Richard Nixon line of it's not illegal when the president does it, which I know that the Nixon analogies are just getting beat to death, but they just get more and more apropos, to use that word a second time in this podcast, every day. But it based off, they read an article in the Atlantic about it, and there's like, basically it's going to have to go to the Supreme Court. If he tries to pardon himself, it's the only option is for it to go to the Supreme Court, and I fully expect that they will not let him get away with that.
But even
at least, dear God, I hope not.
Yeah, even if they did, well, yeah, let's hope not, because really then the presidency shifts almost to a dictatorship where he can just do whatever he wants, then just pardon himself to get out of it. But say he does pardon himself, or even say he pardons his aides and family members from any kind of legal action, what does that do to his presidency? You got to imagine it's going to delegitimize it even more for him to be spewing all this nonsense about fake news, and they're like, oh crap, they got us. Pardons. You're okay.
I guess it goes back to, if hypothetically, and again, my theory on Trump is that he didn't have any direct involvement, but he has obstructed justice. If all this comes out that, his family and people that he knew were involved in Russia, and he issues pardons, if that's the end of it, if there's no further investigation, this is all we find out, I'll use the Chris Rock adage I've used before, it's better to look guilty at the mall than innocent in jail. I think if that is the scenario that this ends up being, he'll just be like, well, look, I pardoned all these people. It was a witch hunt to begin with. I went ahead and pardoned them. There's nothing that can be done now because everybody involved has been pardoned, and I'm just going to go on with my administration. And it'll be a shit show. It'll be disgusting. It'll be the worst presidency that we have ever seen, short of Millard Fillmore. And I only know that because he's consistently voted as the least popular president because he really exacerbated tensions leading up to the Civil War. But
thank you for that information.
No problem. But I don't know. I really hope it does. If this is why I really wish we had a vote of no confidence the way that Parliament in UK does, because if he pulls something like that, it is just God, stupid rule of law that prevents us from just doing things.
So from what I've read, his lawyers were like, well, we're just looking into it. It's not in the context of he can't wait to pardon himself. He's just curious.
We're just checking.
It's
We're
like,
just checking.
Okay, all right. So I'm just curious how much money you have in the cash register. I don't actually want to take it yet. And then on top of that, his lawyers. I almost said law team. I feel like it sounds stupid, and I shouldn't have said it in the first. Anyway, he's trying to undercut the investigation, going after Mueller for conflicts of interest again, which he's already tried, and it didn't really work.
He came
so
out and tweeted
again.
about it today. And he's like, "Oh, this investigation shouldn't be happening as conflicts of interest." And their justification is that people on Bob Mueller's team at some point in the past donated to Democrats. And you know who else donated to Democrats? Donald J. Trump. Donald J. Trump. That doesn't fucking count. I'm sorry, that doesn't count.
Yeah, donations to Democrats, past clients, and his relationship with former director James Comey, because apparently that matters.
Well, it's like saying, well, you know, he worked for the FBI, and that janitor over there worked for the FBI because he cleaned the FBI building. He can't be a janitor here. He's a fucking spy. That's just.
I mean, it just, to me, you're making yourself look so guilty by just constantly harping on this and trying to find some ways to get out of it, because you can't just accept it and move on. If there's nothing there, then they're not going to find anything. To me, I don't think anything's going to come of it, because there's just so much out there and still nothing has happened.
You know who Donald Trump reminds me of?
Oh, so many things.
Creed Bratton. That's all I can think about. Is I can just imagine like Creed stealing someone's Swiss rolls in the office, someone raising a fuss about it, probably Dwight probably Dwight, and then him just going, "I don't know who it was, but it wasn't me." And then every time someone has a conversation, him just popping in and going, "I don't know who stole the Swiss rolls, but it definitely was not me. I did not take those. So if you guys are thinking about me, that is ridiculous, and I'm insulted."
That was a great metaphor. And like Creed Bratton, he's a criminal. So, sorry, spoilers. If you haven't seen last season, yeah. I mean, this is just. It's just another and he's tweeted a ton of ridiculous things today that we both agreed we would just wait to talk about on Sunday.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ, take the man's phone.
I got my phone taken from me when I got written up in school because I had a laser pointer and I shouldn't have. My parents had the good wherewithal to say, if you can't play by the rules of the public education system, you're not going to have this phone for a week. And I really took that to heart. And I'm not the fucking president. So I really feel like if me at, 16, I didn't get a phone until I was 16. I grew up in a rural area. My mother still doesn't have. If it's 16, I can get taught the lesson of the value and the importance of what a phone is. This 70-year-old billionaire could probably also grasp it.
Oh, I think he's grasped it. He just thinks it's his ability to spew whatever nonsense comes into his head at any given moment. All right, let's move into Twit, because I really have nothing else to add on this until he actually does try to pardon himself.
That was just a big twit. So
if he tries to pardon himself, he might just have a show solely on that.
Emergency podcast a la 538. Oh my God, listeners, a thing happened. I woke up and didn't put pants on.
We become Alex Jones at that point. We're just screaming into a microphone.
Wait, are we gonna get that natural male like testosterone supplement that turns us bright red?
No, we're just gonna eat a lot of red meat.
Alrighty
so let's first up on Twit. I couldn't think of a better way to segue. But anyway, basically Trump he said this in an interview. Was it in an interview or was it just a recording?
This was an interview with the New York Times, and he went totally off the cuff. Yeah,
basically. I mean, at this point, everybody knows what he's saying about Sessions. He's enemy number one in the White House. They're just not talking. Sessions is just in the corner, with his head down, hoping he doesn't get noticed, which won't be hard because he's a little Keebler elf and nobody notices him.
Until he stands those ears are pretty big.
Tries to talk about civil forfeiture. Basically called Sessions out for recusing himself and saying he never would have chosen him for the job if he had known. He should have told him that he was going to recuse himself. Basically, it's just like everything else. He wants complete loyalty because he doesn't understand how the government works, and the Attorney General doesn't work directly for the he's not there to do the president's bidding. I guess he assumes because he picked him for the office that means he has to do everything he says.
Yeah, it's just it's like, hey, that's a conversation they should have had. And like, hey, if at any time in the future I come under investigation for something that rhymes with shmusha, I'm gonna go ahead and need you to not recuse yourself if you come under a lot of public pressure. That needs to be, very specifically outlined. And like, I have no love for Jeff Sessions. His interest in civil asset forfeiture, reigniting the drug war, forcing mandatory minimums, and deporting a bunch of people has no appeal to me in the slightest. But that being said, I feel bad for him right now because at least the man is principled. I don't agree with his principles. I think his principles are pretty stupid. But
I think Jeff Sessions is a moron, and I'll be the first to say he can go fuck himself. But this is more about the fact that this is Trump's administration, and it's getting to the point where he has nobody else to attack, so he's just going to start turning on his own administration.
Also, what's the qualification? I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I finished. I just said he's doing it for clicks, so basically alluding to him being a professional victim too.
What type of requisite experience do you need to become attorney general? Like, he was just a dude from Alabama.
You need to have bought a hamburger at a McDonald's before 1984, I think. That's about it.
Oh, that was back before they had fire-safe cigarettes. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, we're gonna keep going. Exxon.
Yeah.
Exxon fined for violating sanctions against Russia. When Tillerson was CEO, was he the CEO?
When he was running. So that's just neat. It's just so funny because you remember Politico with Susan Glasser and some of those horrible interviews that she does.
Yeah, like all of them.
Yeah, they're all really, really boring, and she just asks the worst questions.
She doesn't ask any hard questions.
She gets soft person handled regularly. Well, she interviewed Condoleezza Rice. We'll find out. Interviewed Condoleezza Rice, and she was like, "Oh no, I recommended Rex Tillerson. He's a Texas oil man. He's a straight shooter. He has experience with these people." And that's all I could think about when I read that. And I was like, "Dang it, Condi! Like I know you're a super smart lady, and you teach and stuff, and I'm sure you understand like political theory really well, but you still like the George W. Bush administration has just this unfortunate association with oil barons, and you're not helping it because it's been 9 years since you guys left office, and you're still finding ways to recommend oil people be in offices."
Well, I mean, you taking Bush back, or you keeping Trump?
I mean, I'll take Bush back. Like, at least I knew what Bush was gonna do. Yeah, he had some gaffes a lot, and he started one of the longest and most detrimental conflicts that we've seen in the modern era. But at least he was a good old boy, and he didn't tweet.
Oh yeah, there was no tweeting. God, I missed that. All right, the Mosul occupation forces begin fighting amongst themselves.
So it's interesting. The Mosul occupation, I give it some background. So when the big fight to take back Mosul started, there were some interviews with Peshmerga, and there were Shia militias riding with the Peshmerga, and the Peshmerga were not happy. For those of you that don't know, the Peshmerga is the Kurdish fighting force. Absolutely ridiculously. I'll tell a different story about them later, but whatever. So yeah, the Peshmerga, they're fighting with these Shia militias, and they're really, really pissed off. And the journalist interviewing them is like, "Why are you so upset?" And they're like, "These people aren't here to free Mosul. These people are here to kill Sunnis. They don't like ISIS, and we don't like ISIS, but they don't like them because we're Sunnis, and we don't like them because they're killing us." And I mean, just kind of paint the picture. This is when this started last year, and so apparently there's reports of bickering and fighting between the occupational forces, which are going to be the coalition forces and the Kurds and Iraqi Hezbollah and other Shia militias and Sunni militias. So, you have all this energy, running into this campaign to take Mosul back, and then they take Mosul back, and now all that energy has to be transferred to, really boring bureaucratic governance, and that doesn't translate well.
Next. Trump claims he signed more bills than any president ever. He hasn't. Like not even close. I don't know. They should just not let him speak publicly anymore. He just goes into places and he has to like think of some lie to say to make himself seem bigger than everybody else.
So in looking up this fact checking, aside from the fact that no, he has not signed more bills than anyone. Jimmy Carter signed 70 within his first 6 months of office.
Trump hasn't even hired 70 people for offices in his first 6 months. Like this is he's maybe stop trying to sign bills and get some stuff.
You know what's even funnier? Currently, Trump is actually behind the bell curve for bills signed. Normally, by this point in office,
because those goddamn obstructionist Democrats.
Witch hunt! But apparently, statistically, presidents have by now signed 43 bills into law, and he has only signed 42. Sad.
Ooh, God damn it. Spicer resigns in protests over the Italian hair guy.
Scaramucci.
Yeah. I didn't want to say his name. I could say his name. I can say his name, but
anytime I want.
That's not.
Didn't want
that's
to.
not the. That's not really the twit. It's the fact that Spicer stole a mini fridge out of the White House on the way out.
Just love it. It's the best thing I've heard in so long. It's the most lighthearted thing that's happened in this entire shit show of a presidency.
It's just the fact that I can picture him just beet red face, no neck, with pursed lips, just struggling to lift this 40-pound refrigerator, just drag it through the
I'm taking all the Sunny D home. Fuck you.
Like he didn't even try to empty the fridge to make it lighter. He's just taking it all. The door's open and shit's falling out. He does not care. I've got
Chipotle in there. Bring it back, Mr. Spicer.
Oh God!
But did you hear about the irony with Scaramucci? So like he's got on his
he tweeted today about his hairspray obsession or something.
Well, no, he had just the irony. He leaked something to the press corps because like he was brought in and he's like, "We're cracking skulls, and this is, we are not going to have any more of these leaks. I'm going to start firing people left and fucking right if this keeps on, except Sarah Huckabee Sanders." And then on some talk show, he was like, "Hey, Sarah, your makeup looked good the last time you did a press conference. Stick with that person." And then he tried to cover it and be like, "I was talking about myself." But anyway, so Scaramucci himself leaked to the press today that he's going to start firing people, or like the other day, some point this week, that he's going to start firing people if they keep leaking. And I'm like, there is such a beautiful irony in this all.
So,
but just the image of Sean Spicer trying to carry out a mini fridge under one arm with like a black blanket over it, like, "Oh, I'm just moving this around. Just got to get my stuff home. I bought this for myself."
He can't even speak. He's just exhausted. So the next one needs like a little asterisk next to it. It's Trump Jr. and Manafort reached deal to avoid public hearing. That's different because I believe last night Manafort was subpoenaed by one of the committees, if not both of the committees, to speak. So I'm assuming that means he'll have to speak publicly. If you're subpoenaed, it would be a public hearing, which he could still fight because that's the whole reason they did I don't know what changed.
So Judiciary panel withdraws subpoena against Paul Manafort and Russia probe. So
God damn it.
That was 53 minutes ago. So it's not unreasonable that we shouldn't know that.
Okay, we've been doing this for 55, so we're okay. But yeah, so I don't know if that means he's going to go back and do the private hearing. But basically, Trump Jr. went on Sean Hannity's show, which Sean Hannity's doing some crazy stuff this week too, running his mouth about Tapper, I believe. But he basically said he would testify under oath, but then like basically right after struck a deal to avoid a public hearing. There's no oath in a private hearing. That's what I found interesting. I don't understand what the point of it even is if you're not going to put them under oath. But regardless, the committee still have the option if they don't feel like their questions are answered. But the reason that this is believed to have been done, this deal, was because they felt the two men were unlikely to show up to a public session, I guess they would fight it with legal action to not
Sorry, I forgot to put that in my calendar.
do what?
I could just admit, like, they're unlikely to show up. Like, oh, sorry, I forgot to put that in my calendar. That's on me. Let's reschedule.
Apparently, I mean, I guess they can fight it and it'll go to court whether or not they have to go. I don't really know how it works because I'm just not that smart. But Kushner had an interview Monday and Tuesday with the two committees. I haven't really heard much that's come out of it. Have you heard anything? Other than he did an interview where he basically just said he hasn't done anything wrong for the 100th time.
Yeah, no, I haven't heard anything out of it at all. That being said, I try to avoid looking at Jared Kushner's face because it bothers me.
Jared Kushner looks like a child that grew up too fast, but doesn't have the intelligence. So he's just like, he looked like he was about to cry the entire time. I watched about 5 seconds.
Jared Kushner reminds me of the people that work at the New Yorker in Family Guy.
All right, let's do the last one. So Trump went, I believe it's called the Jamboree, the Boy Scouts.
Yes, annual Boy Scout Jamboree was held in West Virginia
Which is
this
not
year.
supposed to have, the Boy Scouts aren't supposed to have, like, political affiliations.
Just Jesus affiliate.
Yeah, that stuff. But, so he goes there, and I actually have the little thing where he calls Obamacare death and gets the Boy Scouts to boo it. But, there's actually more. I mean, he's just sitting there. He says he's not going to talk about politics, then spends the entire speech talking about how he won the Electoral College, how he was at a disadvantage with the Electoral College, how bad Obamacare is, the Democrats. I don't think he ever spoke about Hillary Clinton, but it's possible it's in there. It was nonsense.
I watched some snippets from it today.
And the thing is, the sad part is the man is being cheered on the entire time by, I'm assuming, parents, but also the children are probably getting wrapped up in this too.
I don't know what the hell's going on.
He attacks Barack Obama for never having come to the Jamboree, which is not supposed to have political affiliation in the first place. Obama recorded videos, or a video for one of them to be played during it, but he never came personally. But apparently that opens you up to attack. So we have our current president attacking our former president in front of children, verbally attacking, I should say, in front of children and having them boo policies and God knows what else. It's just, the man cannot cease just stroking his ego at any chance.
Yeah, I watched some snippets of it on The Guardian, and they had, at the bottom, like under the video, they had the tagline, "Fake media, fake news, thank you." And I was like, oh yeah, they're kind of summarizing in a jokey way. And like, it's odd, like there's all this booing happening. I legitimately think some people were booing the president. I don't think it was entirely just like them booing Obama, because I listened to parts of it, and there were accounts from many parents afterwards that were like, this is fucking disgusting that he did this. I think some of the boos may have been directed at him, but there was a part where there's a ton of,
you can listen to the parts where the cheers were going on.
Oh yeah, they're cheering their asses off. But there was this funny part where he's just like, fake media, fake news, thank you. It's just like, what? You are talking in front of kids age range.
Well, that seems
like
to be his new thing.
We had him like
He's gotten rid of sad, and he's just going to say thank you at the end of his statements.
I would love if he ended a State of the Union with sad. It would make me sad.
Don't say that, because that is a very real possibility.
Beetlejuice.
All right, so that's it for this week's incredibly late podcast. Sorry about that.
It's my fault.
100% his fault. But it'll be out now. Our blog post is out, so read that. That gives you something. I've been tweeting it. I've tweeted it a couple times. No, tell us how terrible it is. That's fine. God damn it.
Yeah, wake up, Jeff.
Yeah, thanks for waking me up an hour and a half earlier than I needed to. And yeah, like every week, follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, and subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Google Play, whichever, Stitcher, SoundCloud, wherever you get your podcast. We appreciate it. We love your comments. And we will
And
talk to you.
start doing the Armchair Constituents drinking game. Every time one of us says ridiculous or frustrating, go ahead and take a drink. It'll make the
But
show
don't
better.
don't add whenever we mention the fifth column, because you'll die.
Yeah, you might get alcohol poisoning.
We will talk to you Sunday.